And Mrs. Sundit.
Yes.
Pearl, I followed your order this time, right?
I believe you did.
See, I'm trying to do better for you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, so this is the part in the meeting where we would normally open it up for the community forum. Again, in case you came in late, if you were looking to address a topic with the board, we just asked you to type your name and the topic that you'd like to speak to us on in the chat window. And then we will just give it about 10 seconds here, see if anyone's typing anything in there. If not, we'll keep an eye on it and address it later in the meeting. All right, we'll keep an eye on that. Since there is none, we'll move right into the kind of action. Can I get a motion for item D1, personnel in its entirety?
A motion.
Second.
Okay, so sorry, I'm not sure who the motion was.
It was Christy.
Ms. Fishman. I heard a second by Mr. Loyer. Any discussion on D? And that opens for you as well, Tom. I don't know if there's anything you need to address. I don't think so, but.
No.
All right, so for item D, Mr. Martin's a yes. Mrs. Fishman?
Yes.
Mrs. Wood?
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy?
Yes.
Mrs. Nickerson, I don't think has changed anything yet. Mr. Loyer?
Yes.
Mr. Patch?
Yes.
Mr. Hoyt?
Yes.
And Mrs. Sundit?
Yes.
All right. I will make a motion for item E in its entirety. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
All right, so motion by Mr. Martin, second by Mrs. Wood. Any discussion on E? All right, Mr. Martin's a yes. Mrs. Fishman?
Yes.
Mrs. Wood?
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy?
Yes.
Mr. Loyer?
Yes.
Mr.
Andy,
Patch?
chance is on there now.
Okay. Mr. Patch, sorry.
Yes.
Mr. Hoyt?
Yes.
Mrs. Sundit?
Yes.
And Mrs. Nickerson? Mrs. Nickerson?
Chance, you just muted yourself. There you go, Chance.
Yes.
There it is.
I think I heard it that time. Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. And that moves us into special presentations. So back, somewhere around Thanksgiving time. And of course, this is fairly normal for this time of the year anyway, but we had asked Tom and Maureen to get together some projections. And so Tom and Maureen, you can certainly tee it up, but I just want to make sure that I stayed up front that right now there's more unknown than known. And so, you know, this is definitely nothing more than conversation. And I don't, Maureen, I know that it's like asking someone to paint a picture without telling them what colors or what the finished product's supposed to be. But I just think it's important for us to start giving the board and then anyone in the community that ends up watching or hearing about this some ideas of what we may be facing down the road, just so that it's not quite such a shock if it happens.
Right. And we're still sitting in the unknown in the current year that we're in too, with regards to state aid. We did receive 20% reductions in our August payments, but September and October and November payments came in. So right now we have no idea what the future payments are going to be with regards to this year's state aid before we even start talking about moving forward with projection years.
Okay.
Can you hear me all right?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. So basically these projection tools, these long range plannings, they are documents that are put together. The one that I've generally used comes from the state comptroller's office, and they use the same categories that we do. I mean, we have prescribed categories on all of these things that we have to use for our reporting purposes. So these first slides are basically setting up the numbers that sit in the projections. So this 1920 actuals are the numbers that we just closed with and had audited and posted with the ST3 and filed everything in September. The revenues are in the three major categories: the state aid, the tax levy, and the miscellaneous. And our expenditures are in salaries, fringe benefits, BOCE services, debt service, all other, and utility and fuel. So as we discussed in September, our revenues came in on target and the expenditures were low because we closed and definitely had some savings on the expenditures. And we've kept that 4 million in our unappropriated fund balance, knowing that we're probably going to need to use it this year. Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, no, oh yeah, I thought you want me to throw my 2 cents in right there.
Okay, I thought you were the one running the.
No, but I do want to say something right there real quick. So that 4 million was I'm so glad the board allowed us to put that into our reserves, because that's going to allow us to brace for the scenarios that we're going to show if it is a 10% or, God forbid, a 20% hit to state aid. Go ahead.
Exactly. This is just our revenues in a pie chart, just so that everybody can understand that the biggest portion of our revenues is the state aid, and then we have the tax levy. There's very little other revenue. Go ahead, Connie. Expenditures, again, in the pie graphs on the same categories, just so that it's really clear that we talk about it all the time. Salary and benefits are pretty close to 75% of our total budget. It's basically, we're in the people business. So as you move forward, this is a recap of the budget we're in now in those same categories, and the percentages are basically the same. If you move forward, Connie, the revenues are state aid 57%, tax levy 37%, almost the same exact percentages, and the same is true with the expenditures.
Maureen, can you go back to that slide just for a second? I just had one question.
Okay.
Back up, not the pie chart, right there. Never mind. I thought that there was an increase in BOCES, but I think that was the same, and I wasn't sure why that was, but I think it was about the same the first slide. So.
No, this one is increased a little bit. This is the budget that we're currently sitting in. So
right.
We had increased the BOCES services a little bit.
Okay, and are we still sending that many students to BOCES?
Well, remember that the CTE classes are only a small portion of this number. This is
okay.
All
That's
BOCES
for special.
services. All
okay,
the special ed, all the administrative fees, every service that we use from them.
Okay, and with the kids, with the students with IEPs at home, they are still getting their services at home?
Correct.
That is correct.
Okay.
And Maureen, I know there's just a ton of unknown, but if we were to take, so last school year's budget, we finished $4.1 million under the allowed expenditures.
Correct.
And we can attribute, and I know it's not, every nickel, but we can attribute all of that to the impact of the pandemic, right?
Yeah, the bulk of it.
So would you expect that at the end of this year, again, a lot of unknown, but we're likely to see probably double that, assuming that nothing else changed? So if all the income stayed the same, we'd probably looking to trend significantly under on expenditures?
Probably not. I would say, Andy, this year we're, a lot of that came with the transportation not running, and it is running right now for the most part. All of our runs are still going, even though they're transporting only half the students. And the other pieces of that were a lot of the extra duties, the subs and all of that type of stuff, because we were totally virtual, whereas now we are kind of back in session to some degree. I think we'll be under a little bit, but I don't know if I would say it's going to be double.
And again, Andy, to your point, we don't know. Are they going to allow for high-risk winter sports? What's going to happen with spring sports? What's going to happen, with the band in the spring? We have no idea right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, it just depends on how much of the programming continues to run.
Right. Okay.
Go ahead, Connie. So basically those pie graphs, all come together in the basis for this 3-year projection. Go up one more, Connie. Right here. So this is the tool. It's a little like an Excel spreadsheet that we use. So those numbers are sitting here. You're looking their actual against the budget for the 1920 year, and then our 2021 budget sits there. And then you just take these numbers and you do some broad sweeps across 3 years and kind of look at what the trends look like. This is no way the totals that we know we're going to be dealing with. These are really estimates, but it is a good indicator of how things are going to push out. And basically all I do is change the state aid numbers, give or take, because that's our big swing item is the state aid. We do know, if you go up one more, Connie, that the teacher retirement system pension plan is going to stay the same as the estimate. So we shouldn't have a huge increase there. The only increase will be on the increase in salaries. And the same with the ERS. One more, Connie. The projection is it's still gonna be about 16%. And the health insurance increase is going to be, we're looking at a 5% increase they're talking about right now with the consortium. So those are a few factors that we do know. So if you take this next screen, these are the, what do I want to say, the scenarios or the projections that I'm using to make the 3 years out. And the one that's changing on the next 3 slides is the state aid number right on top. No, stay on that one, Connie, go back up. The year 1, I'm estimating 0% in the first scenario, 10% decrease in the second scenario, and a 20% decrease in the third scenario. And then after that, I'm saying no change in the out years, year 2 and 3. I'm putting the tax levy at the 2%, and basically on the revenue side, keeping the appropriated fund balance and the other revenues constant with no change. On the expenditure side, I've got 3% in each of the 3 years for salary increases in payroll. This is just a altogether percentage. Right now in the out year for the first year, we've got all the non-instructional units are settled at 3.6. So that would need to be lowered to make the 3%. And then we talked about the ERS and the TRS, basically 2% increases. The health insurance, I'm going conservative with the 2% because we're ahead of that number in the budget this year. Utilities, I'm decreasing at 10% because we're ahead of that number in the budget this year, and then no change in the out years. The BOCES and the all other, I'm basically on the projections using the same percentages as the state aid. So if we're dealing with a no change increase in aid, we're going to say that there's going to be no increase in BOCES and no increase in all others. If it's decreasing 10%, then we need to have a corresponding 10% decrease in BOCES and all other. And the same with the 20%. The debt service is our actual debt schedule. So if you now go forward, Connie, this first one with the 0% change in the first year on that state aid projection, all those other constants being the same, we're looking down at about a 2.2 deficit, a 3.5 and a 5. That for us, I think is doable because we have the $4.5 million in fund balance if we don't end up needing to use that this year. So what do I want to say? A flat state aid projection for next year is something that we can withstand if we don't have to put more 20% towards this year's aid, which we still don't even know if we have that. If we go to the next projection with the 10% aid decrease in the first year, those numbers grow to 5.5, 6.7, and 8.3 million deficits. Obviously, that becomes a problem. And then if you go out to the 20%, which is what they talk about right now, you're looking more at 8.8 million, 10 million, and 11.5 million on the out years. So 20%, like I said back in September, is basically about a $9 million decrease on our state aid, is huge. And that is when you're talking basically mandated versus non-mandated. Those would be big cuts. Does anybody have any questions on those? Because I can kind of go back and forth up and down on the slides. Good. Right. The next section, I put these here with our Forecast 5 analytics, that program that we still have the data points. They have some really nice financial, they call it the state of the district. But I like these because they compare us to our peer groups. This is the Oswego County BOCES as our peer group. This one is basically the state of the districts. It just gives you the enrollments across the county. The cash wealth ratio, or the combined wealth ratio, is the middle one. And basically it's the free and reduced lunch, the income percentage. So if you look at Central Square compared to everybody else, we do have the highest enrollment. The 0.56, our combined wealth ratio, is one is across the state, one is considered even. So 0.5 is like half the wealth ratio of the districts across the state. And then the 47.59% is our free and reduced lunch. If you look at us compared to the districts in our county, we have the lowest free and reduced lunch percentage, which essentially is saying that we are the wealthiest district in our county.
Which is why we don't qualify for the free lunch for everybody.
Yeah. The next slide is trending enrollments. It's the big bar graphs. If you see, they're slowly going down. We continue to see declining enrollment, and they're putting it against the free and reduced lunch is that gold line across the top. It has increased slowly as our population declines. We have had some increase in our poverty status, I guess you would say. And then the other interesting one, the blue line, is the students with disabilities. Even though the numbers have remained fairly constant, because the enrollment is declining, our percentage is increasing. This next slide is Central Square. It's the revenues against the state. I like this one because on the left is Central Square with the 58% state aid. The state aid is the orange color. And the state on average is, as a total, is only 38% of districts' revenue comes from the state aid. So the higher the state aid percentage, the harder the hit's going to be when the state aid gets hit, which is why it's impacting to us. On the right is the average cost per student on that same ratio. The next one is the percentages against the entire state of the expenditures. And I like this one just because I know that I say it, but I'm not sure. Sometimes if this proves that all districts, if you look at the teal and the blue, those are the salaries and the benefits. And across the state, it's almost exactly the same. All districts basically are made up of the expenditure packages, salary and benefits is what makes up all of their expenditures. The next slide is very interesting too. The green line is the revenue, the orange line are the expenditures, and they basically follow each other, which makes total sense. You know, as the revenue goes up and down, you correct it with your expenditures. So the expenditures are kind of following the other, the revenues. And then down on the bottom, the blue is the fund balance. And we went for quite a few years where it slowly was decreasing. In the last couple of years, we have been doing a little bit better job of increasing it, putting some reserves together. But when you look at that, this is fund balance, all the districts in Oswego County against their percentage of revenues of their general funds only. And Central Square is one of the lowest as far as fund balance compared to size of budget. I think that's important too, because sometimes when you just look at our number and you say, you know, there's 10 million in fund balance compared to the size of our budget, that is actually pretty small compared to even just the districts in our own county.
And Maureen, Mexico is abnormally large because of the power plant, right?
Yep.
Am I remembering that correctly?
Yep.
And then APW got smacked on the wrist within the last couple of years for having a large one, and yet now
Yeah,
everyone's looking at it saying, "Hey, maybe it wasn't so silly to have that much."
right.
So,
Now they're going to be able to live a few years longer than some of the rest of us,
Yep.
if the 20% comes to fruition.
right.
And again, what's the penalty for being on the wrong side of that line?
Slap on the
You
wrist.
just get, it's on the report from the comptroller.
Okay, let me reemphasize that one more time. That's all it is, right?
It is, unless, people become upset by it, I guess I would say.
Well, it's
Right.
a fine balance to manage, but looking at
Right.
us on the far side of this line or of the bar graph here, certainly seems that we would be smarter if we were to migrate more toward the middle. Or
Oh,
would
no
have
doubt.
migrated toward the middle over the last 10 years. A slap on the wrist seems pretty
Mhm.
pretty minor compared to failing to be able to handle a situation like this, given
Right.
the penalty. Just my opinion.
Yeah, yeah, and we have been pretty good with our budgeting. We're generally never behind it, but we haven't been hugely over budgeting, so we haven't been really making a lot of fund balance. We had created a couple of the last couple of years. Remember, we did the new TRS, ERS reserve, so that's brought it up a little bit. And then if this was to have the closing year this year, I think we would go up a little bit because we've held all of our money at the end of last year into the fund balance.
And Maureen, I know it didn't go anywhere, but at one point I remember, because there was talk of them, they threatened that, for school districts that carry too much, then they would change the formula so it impacted what we could do in our tax levy. And that was one of the scare tactics they used to make sure districts didn't go for it.
And that was one of the one of the, what do you want to say, opinions, that if they did the property tax cap legislation, it would also, we wouldn't be able to go to the taxpayers for more, and it would therefore make the use of fund balance happen, kind of the force.
Right.
That was part of what that was about.
But Andy, to your part, actually to Michael's point, in talking with the superintendent since my 5 years now superintendent here, they have always said, because of all the unfunded mandates, that slap on the wrist, we'd rather have that money in there because we're always pounded with these unfunded mandates.
And
And
the threat of future penalty with a big question mark over it is nothing more than a threat.
Correct.
Right. And I know sometimes we get, this isn't a tangent, it's just the reality is we've been taking advice from a state that is billions upon billions of dollars in debt. Like that. Yeah, to Michael's point, we should as a board and as a district definitely feel even more secure about making our own financial decisions and let the state exercise their financial wisdom after the fact.
And that, I do appreciate that you said we could do that this year, and we have. So that fund balance, we did not put it in reserves. It's sitting there in unappropriated fund balance, which means we can use it. Because a lot of times, it's nice to have the money in reserves, but you have to remember that those reserves technically can only be used for what the reserve is. It's not just for your general operations. This last slide is the operating expenditures per pupil, and Central Square is on the bottom. We spend the least per pupil, but a lot of that is just a function of the denominators. Because we're so large, it makes us more efficient just by the nature of it. Obviously, Sandy Creek being so small, it makes them almost not efficient because they just don't have enough students to, they'll have one class of, say, science or whatever, and they just don't have enough students for it, but they need to have it. So future, I don't know. Congress came out with a package. You can go forward, Connie, one more. At the end of December, before we left, there is supposedly money in there for schools. And they're already fighting about it. So I don't know. There's been, I think you probably saw, I think it was today or yesterday, school boards came out with the fact that this is nowhere near enough to make up the 20%, putting out the advocacy package for everybody to get, you know, get with your legislators and your people and start pushing on it. And I'm a little nervous that they're going to use it to just shore up this year.
Right, Maureen, just to kind of codify this, the last time they appropriated money in the CARES Act, they reduced our state aid by the appropriate amount, so we saw no benefit, correct?
Correct.
So,
But at least that's keeping our state aid intact. My thought is that if they even do the same thing, it'll keep us whole to the number they originally gave us. We won't go down 20%.
That is assuming, yes, that they don't say, well, that money is needed for other more urgent things, and say that school aid still needs to be reduced by 20%, right? I mean, because they've shown a willingness to redirect funds as they see fit in the past. So
exactly. And it was supposed to be very easy, even though they've redirected the funds. We are now jumping through hoops to get that CARES money. Nobody yet has submitted and been approved. They've changed the criteria twice on us. Everybody submitted back in the beginning of November, and then the whole thing went to court. They came back, they opened the portal back up and basically took them all away, and we did it again. So they're all sitting there now for approval.
Maureen, but we have already felt the reduction in state aid that's tied to that money we're supposed to be allocated.
Can you say that again? I couldn't hear you, Christy.
Have we, because you know, Andy just mentioned, we talked about it before, that if every dollar we get from the federal government, we'll get reduced $1 with the state aid. Have they already taken the anticipated federal state aid out of our state money?
Yeah, that was right in the original runs. They on our state runs, they had a line that they called pandemic adjustment with a negative for us, basically $1 million. And then they had an ad at the end that said CARES money, $1 million.
Right.
So that original number had it.
So the money's already been taken out of our state aid. So we've already seen the cut, but we have not seen the reimbursement from the federal government yet?
Correct.
Maureen, also UPK. I was just talking to Aaron today about that last payment we didn't get from them. So am I to assume then that UPK is going to be cut 20%, which now that's going to come out of our general fund budget?
Correct. They took 20% of the closing UPK because they're taking the money out of the payments that are coming to us right now.
Yeah.
So the 20% came out of the closing of the 1920 UPK grant, because you submit your finals like in September for the previous year. So it's actually, we kind of lucked out. It's not a full 20% because we had already submitted twice for payment and received it.
Right.
So it was a little less than 20%. So we basically just didn't get a final payment.
Right.
I think it's like 13% was what we had left to request.
Yep.
We didn't get it. And they took the 20% on the August and September payments, September, October, and November, they paid in full, but it's hard to explain, but we don't get the bulk of our state aid until the spring.
Right.
The September, October, and November payments are straight payments to the TRS. They go directly, they become our pension payments. For us, we never see the money, it's just a journal entry. So those were left intact. And I'm sure that was done intentionally because they're not going to short the pension system. So, but right now the December payments and supposedly the January ones are going to be whole. But they did just take the 20% out of the UBKs.
Yep.
Any questions, anybody? Thoughts for the good of the order? I wish I could tell us more. There is 3 weeks now between board meetings because of Martin Luther King. So it'll be interesting to see if we have any type of runs out by the end of January when they're not even telling us what type of cuts or potential cuts they're giving us for this year. That
So
will be
Maureen,
really
I'd mentioned two things. First is, I mean, kudos obviously to administration, but also I think it is important in this case to mention to the board, because sometimes it feels like year after year, we look at these budget numbers and does anything we do make a difference? And I realize that none of it is what we would desire if we were waving the magic wand, but to think over the last 4 years, 4 years ago, I think it was 4 years ago, our fringe benefits were 30% of our budget. And in this projection, I think if I saw correct, it's 26%, Maureen. So, you know, the things year over year that I think we're doing as a district are having a positive impact. It's just, it's being absorbed in other places. So I think that's one good thing I'd call out. But the other thing is that, you know, when Maureen was talking about state averages of what their budget is covered by state aid, I think that's important for us to realize and understand, because while every district's going to feel this pinch, the reality is when we talk about a 20% reduction, we're talking about possibly almost $10 million impact to us. Another district that is the exact same budget as us, $82 million, could be talking about an impact of a couple $1 million because so much of their pie is taken up by their tax revenue. So we're not going to get, right. We're not going to get the same level of angst from other districts. I just think it's important that we lobby and scream because it is our scenario. Like our representatives, quite frankly, spend more time in the districts where there's not griping, like a Skaneateles. And I'm not saying Skaneateles is doing anything wrong,
no,
but no one wants to week after week, month after month, hear the griping about, oh, I need more money, I need more money. We're not saying we need more money. We need what was told was coming so that we can live to the commitments we made for the budgets, right? So it's not a level playing field at all. And I don't want anyone to think that it is.
And especially for this year. I mean, we're halfway through it, still standing here not knowing if we're going to receive what we were told.
Yep.
Yeah, and if, you know, to Tom and to the, you know, to the administration, the 5% add to health costs is a phenomenal number. You know, with the consortium, it really, I think that needs to be applauded when you only have a 5%, you know, for, you know, forecasted amount. That's a really good thing that the district did. And then second, I would like to say that I got a good feel from Schumer's rep about trying to earmark this money so that the governor wouldn't take it. And he just looked at me, he goes, hey, he's took it once, Steve. What do you think he's going to do again? So it is phenomenal to me, you know, looking at the overall population of this district, the wealth of this district or lack thereof, and to feel like we're, you know, just not getting the federal dollars. It's just astounding to me. And our representatives need to hear this every day.
Yep.
Every day. So that's my 2 cents to it.
Yeah, I'm thinking we're going to be lucky if they take this new stimulus money, keep us whole for this year, and offer us a no change budget for next year.
Unless, Steve, it's somebody's agenda all along to force consolidations, which couldn't be fully accomplished through the 70s and 80s of districts combining together. And this is what they're doing to strangle the districts to just basically not become solvent anymore, to the point of just having to go countywide.
Huh.
So.
Yeah, Tom, you know, not to debate it. You're attributing him to being smart, and I don't think that he is. I think he's desperate. I don't think, you know, a lot's going to depend, you know, Wednesday when you know, you find out who's going to control the Senate, because it really, if everything that I've been told, New York State is not getting bailed out. The money that they want, they're not going to get through Mitch McConnell. They're not going to do it. Period. He's drawn a line in the sand. So, you know, politically, that's what I'm being told. So it's really, you know, I don't know what they're going to do. He doesn't have any money. He's broke. You know, this is that an easy grab of $1 million, and I'm expecting, like, it's like the, you know, Joe said it out of Schumer's office. There's going to be more money coming out of the stimulus package to schools. It's a bigger package, and they're going to take more money. So I mean, my guess over and under on a beer is about 2.2 million total. A million before, probably 1.2, 1.4. So you're talking about taking, 2.4 million from a district that doesn't have the people, the wealth to rely on it. Because I get hammered about the number one thing I get hammered about when people are talking to me is about, school tax increase. I don't have a stomach for it this year. I really don't. So it's not going to be good.
Other comments or questions or?
Steve, just elaborate on that last comment about your stomach for the school tax increase. What's that? What's that mean?
It's not popular. I don't think I can support it. I've yet to talk to anybody that would support a tax increase. I get hammered about it. It's the biggest thing I get hammered about. It might be frustration. It could be changing, but no, nobody wants to see it.
I would just wanted to clarify that because I mean you see and talk to a lot more people than I probably do, so I just want to get your sense on that.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just who I talk to. It's going to be tough. It'd be a lot easier if the governor give us the federal money. It'd be a lot easier.
Yeah. And also just to put it out there, I mean, I show you those graphs. I'll be getting them again as we move forward through the budget process. But our tax rate on True is actually also like this, one of the lowest in the county even. And still people are upset when it comes out.
I guess, and they don't have to be answered now, Tom, if it needs more time, but as Maureen was going through the numbers, I was thinking, how does this impact our future years planning? And I know we take 1 year at a time, even though there's a longer range plan, but for instance, I can't imagine many educators sit back and don't think that we're going to have some version of remote learning for the long foreseeable future, right? We're not talking months. I mean, even with vaccine and everything else, the next COVID could be coming down the pike. So what does that do to our planning? Like, have we noticed a greater increase in need to put more into, for instance, replacement of hardware and Chromebooks and things, or are we not there yet to understand that?
No, that's an excellent point. And Arena and her department have just done miracle work because, for instance, they were pounding us with the cost of Canvas conferencing, okay, like to an astronomical number, almost $8,000 a month. So we are shifting from that and we were going to Google Enterprise. Google Enterprise costs money. But then there were other issues that we just have to deal with. We didn't want to get rid of, we wanted to give the staff and parents and students at least a month where they can like train, they can practice with the two. Unfortunately, Google kind of has us, basically at their whim of waiting. And they're like, yep, you're going to get it. You're going to get it. But I made a promise to the teachers and the parents and the students that we would have that month. So we're going to carry both of them. There's another added expense. Obviously, the cost of all of the Chromebooks going home and coming back, and we've had our damages there. So the original replacement plan obviously had to be addressed. I think Arena has done an amazing job in utilizing the Smart Schools bond money, probably the best that I've seen any district use. But it's going to get to the point, Andy, to your point, this is another one of those unfunded mandates that we're struggling with. Long term, I mean, how long are we really going to be able to plan for this combination of distance learning, hardware, all the things that we need to put in to that? You're dead on.
Right. Other comments or questions? So as Maureen mentioned, there's 3 weeks to the next board meeting, and Tom, we'll obviously leave it to you, but I'm guessing this will just be a regular standing session for the most part, with updates and as numbers change from the state.
Absolutely. We'll keep sending the board all the information when we get them. It's not like you're not going to hear anything until 3 weeks from now. Whenever we get this stuff, whether it's on a Friday memo, but you'll get the whole breakdown when we get them. Absolutely.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see when we do get them. It's just going to be very interesting.
Yep.
All right. Well, thanks, Maureen.
Yeah.
with that, we'll move into reports. Now, there's no particular unfinished business, so I'll open it up to the board for any topics or questions they might have. Nothing doing. Mrs. Fishman, nothing?
No.
All righty. I have nothing to report or ask about either. So with that, we'll turn it over to Mr. Colabufo for the superintendent's report.
I'd like to call it Between Two Ferns with Tom Colabufo. All right. Some of you are laughing. Get that? All right. Here we go. Soccer. Emma Herman was named first team All-State, and Cora Cohane was named third team All-State. Those are huge honors in the sports world. The girls basketball team visited Elderwood Nursing Home to drop off gift baskets for residents. They did not actually go into the home. They followed all the protocols. They were outside. And from what I heard, the residents were very grateful to look out and be able to see faces, friendly faces. That's an amazing thing that the girls basketball team has always done. And it's just another example when we talk about the attributes of the Central Square graduate, the selflessness and giving back to your community is just amazing. COVID update, our total as of 2 p.m. today was 104 cases. It's actually 107 cases as of right now. 3 more cases have come in since then. And just an interesting point, there at around 1 o'clock today, we hadn't got a single call from the health department, which was very odd. Totally opposite of what happened during Thanksgiving, the next day or 2 weeks afterwards. So it was really even more odd when I called 6 other superintendents in our county, and they also received 0 calls, cases, and whatnot. And then some minor for us started trickling in. But in talking with the health department, what they feel, and we agree, is that when you've got the pause in place like all the districts in Oswego County have right now, what you have is parents, if a kid does have a symptom or whatnot, they're probably just waiting it out. Since the FFCRA was not extended, parents would actually have to use their accrued days they wouldn't be paid to stay home, with their kids. So what we're just assuming is that the spike is there because Oswego County is saying we're seeing ridiculous numbers, but they're not seeing a lot of numbers of 18-year-olds or lower being tested like they did prior to Thanksgiving, prior to Christmas. So that's just an interesting thing right there. I think some parents are basically saying, what's the point anyway? Because even if my kid has it, they're just going to be, home until the 19th. So it's just interesting. We'll see how that plays out. We did have 3 today, but we were at the point where it was 6 or 7 a day. So we'll see. Again, as we speak, Cuomo has not. He was supposed to do it by the 31st, but like a lot of other things, he just refuses to make an announcement regarding high-risk sports, which are, basketball, which is for some districts, hockey, where we send our kids to Fulton to play, cheerleading, basketball, wrestling. So we don't know right now what's going on. We're probably assuming it's not going to happen. But publicly, I just want to say I would like somebody to ask the governor, why is it different in the other states where right now they are allowed to play their high-risk sports? What matrix, what is he using to deem that it's not right now for the kids here? It's very interesting. I just want to be able to say that publicly. Other than that, Andy, that's all I have. Again, I want to give a huge shout out. Teachers are doing wonderful. I regularly get emails from parents saying that this is not like it was in the first closure. Not that the teachers weren't trying their best, but they're very happy with the one learning management platform, Canvas. And I want to give a huge shout out to the teachers, but I really, really, really want to give a shout out to that tech support department, because when there's a problem and somebody puts in a ticket, I'm hearing that those things are adhered to very, very quickly. So Chris Martin, Adam Day are just doing a wonderful job. Our whole tech department is just doing a remarkable job right now, and we can't be any more happier.
Any questions or comments for Tom? All right. Thank you, Mr. Colabufo. With that, I will make a motion for item H, which is approval of the first reading of district policies. Can I get a second?
Second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Loy. Any discussion with the normal reminder that this is the first reading? Assuming we vote yes on this tonight, then 3 weeks from tonight will be the second reading, then they'll become policy. And there's quite a few in here, but most of them seem to be rescinding policies that are covered in other areas already and pretty minor tweaks other than that. So any other discussion? All right, Mr. Martin's a yes. Mrs. Fishman?
Yes.
Mrs. Wood? Mrs. Wood?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. McCarthy?
Yes.
Mrs. Nickerson, if you're in there somewhere?
Yes.
She said it.
Did she? I did.
Yeah.
I just heard.
No,
Mr. Loy?
Yes.
Patch? Mr. Patch?
Yes.
Mr. Hoyt?
Yes.
And Mrs. Sunday?
Yes.
Thank you. All right, and with that, we're going to make a motion to move into executive session. As a reminder for anyone that's not going to be coming over because we use a different link, we will not rejoin this, so you can consider this the end of the public session. Pearl, for purposes of the meeting minutes, whoever makes the motion to go into executive session, which will be me, and whoever seconds it will also be the people that close the public meeting, if that works for you. And with that, I'm going to make a motion that the Central Square School District Board of Education move into executive session for the purposes of matters relating to the tenure of a particular person. Can I get a second? With no action to follow. Can I get a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Loy. Any discussion? All right. Mr. Martin's a yes. Mrs. Fishman?
Yes.
Mrs. Wood?
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy?
Yes.
Mrs. Nickerson?
Yes.
Mr. Loy?
Yes.
Mr. Patch?
Yes.
Mr. Hoyt?
Yes.
Mrs. Sunday?
Yes.
All right. Well, thanks everyone. Happy New Year. And don't forget for this exec session, you have a separate link in the email, and we'll join over there in the next 3 or 4 minutes.
Andy, that's what I want to say to you. So I've never done it this way before. And I just want to make sure that I will be able, and maybe Arena, you can answer this. Can I get out of this? Will this convert this recording while I try to go to the new link?
Yeah, it shouldn't affect it at all.
Okay. Sounds good.
All right.
All right, everybody.
Have a good night.
Bye.